after that, in about 40-45 minutes, we're very privileged to have two musicians who've come all the way from Manchester, Rajveer and Alba. Rajveer has been a really important part of the book project. He's helped me tremendously with the book, and we've been doing a kind of roving tour of the around the country, and so this should work beautifully, hey, at the end of this. And he'll explain to you also his relationship to some of the artists that I talked to and that I'm going to talk about. So we're going to be in kind of two halves, if you like, in terms of how we're going to do this. And so we're going to start off with me wittering for a while, and as I said, I don't know, you really do want me to have this mic, I take it? Because if you do, I'm going to have to take it off this thing. Alright, so I can do like a pop star mic now. I won't break into song, don't worry. Alright, so as I said, this book, Sacred and Secular Musics, in a sense it feels like a bit of a haunting to me now. Where's Chris? Because so many of the musicians who were central to the writing of the book, to its inspiration, have passed on. And perhaps most significantly is Bhai Ghulam Muhammad Chand, who comes from the Rababi tradition of Kirtan, of Sikh Kirtan. And in a sense, it was meeting him and spending time with him, and I'll go into this in more detail later, that was the real motivation behind the book. And in a sense, and since getting to know him, we produced 2 CDs of his Kirtan, and he died this year in March. And in a way, myself and Rajveer, in the last 2 times we've done this, they've been pretty much eulogies to him because of him passing on. And so I'll talk about him as I go on. But in terms of how today was supposed to pan out, I was going to say that the book itself has a website, has a YouTube site with the music attached to it, because obviously music books, it's useful to be able to listen to the music, and some of the musical analysis in the book requires you to actually have access to the music, so it's quite useful. And I was hoping today, but this is where I'm going to stick, you've got to stick to the plan, right? I was hoping today that actually we were going to have live musical interludes with me talking, but London traffic has seemed to have kept our musicians a little stuck. So if they turn up in time, they'll turn up, but Dej is going to perform something, Amrit Lohia and Hardeep Sierra, and as I said, all right, so this has changed a bit, and then Rajveer and Albert will be performing. And the reason for having live performances with the book, as having the YouTube site, is that the musical inspiration is very important for me, anyway, personally, behind the book, and the musicians are very important in terms of the book. Even though I've kind of written it, in a way, it's a writing up of the things that I was taught or that I learnt from those musicians in India and Pakistan. And actually, that's where the story of this book begins. So in 2008, Tej and our children, we all moved to Lahore. And we spent 2 years living in Punjab, a year in Lahore and about a year in Chandigarh. And during that period of time, we were working on a project that was looking at popular religion. And we were looking at popular religion across the border. And that was an exploration of shrines and performances at shrines. And my main kind of focus in this work was to look at performances, to see how people, well, ostensibly how they do devotion, how they perform their acts of worship. And what I found while I was there, or incidentally, is that music was a really important part of devotion. And actually, in a lot of the shrines in West Punjab, dancing was also a very important part of the devotion, even though I don't in the book explore dance in the same way. And one of the things that sort of came across to me, or puzzled me, during these conversations with musicians or with meeting of musicians, was the classifications or the labels that were used both to describe themselves and to be described. And the label that really kind of confused me most was this term classical, because it was used all the time by a lot of musicians. They would say, oh yeah, we do classical, we do this, we do this, we do this. And of course, being brought up in Birmingham, not too far from here, and going to a kind of very austere and not very nice grammar school, classical music for me was all about violins, it was all about tonal harmony, it was about orchestras. It wasn't about performing the kinds of music these musicians were performing, using a tabla or using a stringed instrument or even using a harmonium. It sort of stuck in the back of my head as to why are they using this label? What is the purpose of this? And so that kind of remained in the background of my head while we were doing this work on shrines. And the work that we did on shrines, as we were crossing the border and going back and forth actually between Lahore and Chandigarh for a period of 3 months, we might be the only commuters across that border actually. What it became apparent to me was that just as we were looking at different religious classifications, so what shrines are Sikh shrines or Hindu shrines or Muslim shrines, in the same moment in which these classifications or categorizations emerge, music classification and categorization also emerges. And so what you have is really sort of at the beginning of the 20th century up to partition, really, a coalescence of musical forms. So Kirtan becomes Sikh, if you like, Qawwali becomes Muslim, and Dharmic Geet are seen as Hindu. And this kind of coalescence, if you like, between religion and musical form became of great interest to me. And the way in which it was performed, if you like, this coalescence, wasn't so simple in the ways in which musicians enacted their practice, if you like. So another musician who's died, who was, again, very important to this book. In fact, he opens the book. In the introduction, it's Hafiz Khan Sahib's story that is actually the framing of the book, and he's also there with the closing of the book with Pandit Yashpal, who was another very important musician to the writing of the book. Hafiz Khan taught Durpad, or what he called Durpad, but other people might know as Drupad, at an art centre in Lahore called Chitrakar. And Chitrakar, again, was a very important space for us as a family. It was a place where our daughters would go and learn violin or guitar, and I learned the beginnings of flute at this art centre, and it was a place where we all interacted with many musicians. And so Hafiz Khan was a very interesting character. We're at SOAS. A PhD has been done on him at this place, in fact. And what he argued when he talked about Durpad was that actually the whole way in which it's taught in India and the way it's understood is just a bit of a manufacture. And really, it's a pure Islamic form of music. And in the Islamic form of music, I'll give you an example. For alap, he said alap is actually Allah-ab. And he had a whole revisioning, if you like, of Durpad as a form. But his interpretation, which is what I will call it, I'm not going to say whether I think it was right or wrong, his interpretation was entirely correct and acceptable for the circumstances in which he found himself performing his music. And it was an interpretation, and everyone kind of knew it was an interpretation, but no one would, actually many people challenged him on it, and at any point he was challenged on it, he would be very firm and committed to it. But his own practice, if you like, as a musician, for him transcended even this, yeah? It transcended his own narrative form. And so Dej learned Durpad from Hafiz Khan, and she'll come and tell you maybe a little bit about her relationship with him. And we're hoping that our Bhagavji would arrive at this point and just walk in beautifully and take the scene. But he hasn't come, so then you'll have to sing anyway, I think. So I'm going to just hand over. G sharp?
Yeah, that's okay.
G. You want G sharp? G.
I'm tired, so I'm going down. Okay. Use this one?
Oh, you might want to use that one actually. You want to sit?
Feel better sitting.
Okay. You want to try that one? That's quite
Okay.
loud.
Yeah. Is it loud?
Yes. It's,
I'll try and stand up.
alright.
Okay, so I'll probably I'll just sing it. I think maybe.
You don't want to.
I could say, yeah. I mean, so yeah, Hafiz Khanzab was the first person I learned from when we were on our travels. A very significant person I came to know, I think, more after he'd passed away. Because after that, I ended up learning from a number of other people who also were very significant. We were very lucky in terms of coming across people who still embodied all of this boundary crossing, still embodied the understanding of the history and how it related to the musical production, who still could remember compositions that were no longer being sung or taught, but yet they were passed on through family, right? So I was privileged in some ways to be the kind of Sikh learner. So I was taught a drupad that no one else was allowed to sing when we sang in our collective group. And they were told not to, because if you go outside singing this devotional drupad, I will be the one that gets in trouble. And I have to maintain that discourse that Rinda's just told you about. So it was interesting that I would be singing on my own, with everyone else with their mouths absolutely silent, just doing the tal with me while I'm singing. So I almost feel like I'm doing that right now again. All right, so I'll just do a little bit of it so you'll get a sense of what the alap sounds like, and then just a bit of the drupad. Yeah, we were going to have the Pakavij, which is a really important part because Hafiz Khan was actually a Pakavaji. So the tal is extremely important, so I'll be singing all over the place, so I hope you'll forgive me. Allah tero naam nit taran Allah tero naam nit taran Rajan ke Raja Maharaja Daraja Chatridas Vidya Nadan Raja Ram Rajan ke Raja Jo Mangate ini chapali pavat karne ko ai ye dane Raja Ram Rajane ke Raja Jo Jo Mangate ini chapali pavat karne ko ai ye dane Raja Ram Rajan ke Raja Maharaja
Thank you.
All right, so this is fun. See, and this is the only problem with doing these kinds of things, where you have someone performing with you, is that it's pretty hopeless for me then to come on and start talking again. And he's like, oh, is he going to bore us? How long? But it's good, I'm going to bore you until the next piece of music comes along. So Hafiz Khan, as I said, was I actually, at the time of interviewing Hafiz Khan, I really didn't understand a word he was saying to me, or the context of it. So my narrative here also is kind of, it's post-formed, if you like. And the other figure who, as I said, played a hugely significant role in the book, and in a sense, he posed a question, if you like, which it was, as I said, the first problem I was having with talking to people was this issue of classical. Bai Chan posed a much more, if you like, profound question in terms of thinking about religion. So in 2008, we arrived in Lahore. It was all a bit strange for children. It was a bit strange for all of us living there. And we went to a concert at the Human Rights Commission of Pakistan. And it was a Vasak festival concert. It was in April of 2008. And our daughters at the time were 4 and 8. And they were messing around, and they were bored. There were speeches, as there always are in these things. There was some, I think some performances had gone on, and there were fights were happening right in front of us. And then Bai Chand came onto stage, and when he came onto stage, he started singing, and when he sang, he started off by saying Ik Onkar. And then he went on to say Satnam Kartapurk. And those are the opening lines of the Ard Granth. And those are words that our daughters were aware of, and they suddenly stopped messing around, and they stood up and said, what is going on? Who is singing this, and why are they singing it here? And actually they were listening to Bai Chand, who performed at the time. He did 3 or 4 shabads actually on the stage. And why was it was confusing for my daughters, it was also confusing for me, because as I said before, you know, if you brought up in Birmingham in the 1970s, wonderful place, Sanjay, you know as well as me, when you think about Kirtan, or you think about going to a Gurdwara, these are the kinds of men that you will predominantly see on stage, right? You don't imagine, and even here, I mean, Bai Chand is kind of represented similarly, if you like, but at the time he didn't. At the time on the stage in Lahore, he wasn't wearing a turban. He did have a harmonium, but there was also a sarangi player and a tabla player, and it was a bit of like, well, who is this guy who is playing in Lahore? Who is ostensibly a Shia, you know, if you asked him, he would identify himself as a Muslim and as a Shia. And so digging into or finding out about his life, and this is a whole chapter really in this book, and something that Dej has written on as well, it was like a finding out about this tradition, this Rababi tradition. The partition, 1947, had resulted in its kind of dissolution in terms of practice and practitioners, but also its erasure from memory. And if we were talking about memory earlier on. So in some senses, the partition sealed this notion that Kirtan is performed by Sikhs and is a Sikh thing. And so this guy posed some huge questions and challenges to my own thinking and to what I understood to be the Sikh tradition, which I've been brought up with, right? Where, you know, you have this kind of notionality of what a Sikh is. Perhaps more profoundly, actually, and this is reflective in the way in which I talk about musicians as interpreters of religious traditions. When he was performing on stage and he used the word Ik Onkar, he followed it up with the word Allah. And then he said that each of these opening lines, and he explained them and interpreted them, He said they were names of God. And again, in a similar way to Hafiz Khan, he's performing in 2008 Pakistan. Several bombs are going off in Lahore during that year. And so the context of the 21st century Pakistan is very important. But I think what's more important is the fact that he felt he could interpret. That he felt within his musical tradition and his musical knowledge, interpretation was okay. That this was something that was valid and something that could be done. This kind of interpretation is almost completely gone from Kirtan as it is performed in anywhere actually in the world. With the passing of Baijan, in fact, these kinds of interpretations, because you require a knowledge base which crosses traditions. Yeah? You need to understand the textual traditions that I would say constitute Punjabi piety. You can't just know. So most people who sing Kirtan today, they are trained in places like Sikh missionary colleges. They only learn the texts of the Ard Granth. They don't learn other texts. They don't have access to other textual sources. In fact, they are kind of prescribed from those textual sources. And so their performances only repeat within that circle. Baichand knew, he knew Qawwali, he knew Arabic, he knew Farsi. He had a huge range, if you like, of referentials. He had a huge range of sources in his head that he could bring to play. Sorry? Okay, so actually Amrit could come and perform at this point, if before I move on. Yeah, I don't mind, that's nice, that's a kind of nice, I could just go into, oh, well, actually no, let her come in, because I've got one more slide before she's supposed to look at my timing. Is she, yeah? I've got 5 minutes I can do, but yeah, alright. Alright, so, actually, it wasn't perfect timing. As a deep arrived as well. Alright, so you're, alright, so. And so what I say about these musicians is that they represented what I call the hetero-religious domain. And what do I mean by that? I mean that they would perform at all shrines. They could perform at a sant like Amarjit Singh here. Sant. They could perform at a Sufi shrine, like Nuzhat Sahiba's here, Sufi shrine. Or they could perform at a guru's shrine, yeah, like Rajvir's shrine, right? So these musicians could perform. They could perform on Monday at yours, Thursday there, Tuesday there, and they had the sufficient knowledge, if you like. They had the sufficient skills, both textually and musically. So I'm not saying that they didn't know that they have to sing a certain kind of text here or a certain kind of words here. They would know that. They had that knowledge. And what happens in sort of colonial modernity, late 19th, early 20th century, is that these musicians start being forced, in a sense, or because you could argue because of the market, they start becoming separated. And they start separating into particular shrines and particular genres of music. So Muslims become Qawwals, Sikhs become Kirtan performers, and Hindus perform Dharmic Geet at small shrines. And you see this happen if you look through musician biographies. And so the one that I think is probably most controversial, but no one's taken it up on me so far, is someone like, say, Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan. So Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan, in all his interviews, talked about how he's been a Khan Sahib for 800 years, and his family has been performing music since then. And actually, of course, this is entirely not true. They're a small group his was a musician family from Basti Sheikh in Jalandhar. There were 12 Bastis in Jalandhar, which had a real concentration of musicians. His family became very important because they aligned with the Muslim League. Up to partition, they started this quite terrible form of Qawwali called Iqbaliyat, which is a really funny thing. And then they were radio musicians on Radio Pakistan, his father and his chacha. And that's why, and he's a brilliant musician, no doubt, and we've discussed this many times. He is an outstanding musician, but he doesn't come from an 800-year lineage, right? He comes from the same lineage that all of these musicians came from. And I do have a very lovely interview, a set of quotes in the book, of a family who used to play in a gurdwara, who said that, well, in the 1920s, the Akalis came and they said, well, you should not be playing in this gurdwara anymore. And they then went to Basti Sheikh and learned Qawwali from Nusrat's Mamaji, whose name I forget at the moment, and they then became Qawwals, and they moved to Lahore. And this happens around the 1920s. And so in the 1920s and 30s, you have this shift of Rababis, some going into Qawwali, some going to Bombay. So I'm not, I don't want to romanticize the pre-moment. There's also opportunities for musicians that are arising, and these musicians are taking those opportunities. If you can take your pag off, like this morning, and have a mustache and wear a suit and go to Bombay and become a playback singer, they are all ready to do it, right? So you have many of these guys who are doing recordings, and so it's not a simple question of just the religious reform movements. It's not just the Singh Sabha or the Muslim Leaguers or those people who are putting pressure on musicians. There's also opportunities that, so the book, I do emphasize musician agency. It's not entirely, if they want to, because part of this process, of course, which I'll go on to at the end, is about raising your status, right, as a musician. And aligning with a particular religious or political tradition does raise status, but also, cutting a record raises your status as well. Working in Bombay raises your status because you move into the commodity market. This process is accelerated massively in the post-colonial states of India and Pakistan. Both India and Pakistan are really interested in putting musicians in certain slots. And the slots they put them in is generally classical, folk, or religious. Yeah? And I will return to that story after Amrit maybe comes and plays the sarangi for us. Because this is a nice this is a good pre-colonial instrument.
Quick question, is that door open?
No, it's not. Yeah. Oh, it told you though. But no, we don't want to know because you'll bump into the... you can have a quick question while she's coming, yes.
Yeah, Brenda, where would you locate kind of, what should you call it, the hegemony of the harmonium in all of this? Because I think that was very strategic in killing off a lot of the traditions.
So yes, I'm with you about the harmonium. Okay, I'll let you set up while I answer that question. Okay, so we can tell the story of the harmonium while we're setting up.
And was it a British conspiracy?
No, not at all. So, okay, so for those of you, maybe everyone doesn't know that the harmonium is a German instrument.
Yeah.
Right? So the first thing is that for those of us who were brought up, the other thing about this picture is that they're playing harmoniums, right? So for those of us who were brought up, there is also a stringed instrument actually with these guys. But for those of us who were brought up in this place, harmoniums we thought were the quintessential Indian instrument, right, or South Asian instrument. But actually the harmonium is a kind of corruption of a German organ, and it was brought in by the Germans in the 1880s.
German missionaries.
Missionaries in the 1880s. So there are two parts to this. You can't play all of the facets of what will I call this music? I would call it Desi music, I'm going to call it, for a word, Punjabi music. You can't play all facets of this kind of music, Shastri Sangeet, I don't know like that. But you can't play all sorts of facets of this music on a harmonium, right? It doesn't allow you to play. But it is a democratic instrument. So the harmonium breaks the fact that you have to have an ustad teaching you. It means that in 15 minutes I can teach someone a song, or I can teach, not to sing, but I can teach them to play a song in 15 minutes. So it's democratizing. It allows women to perform. So I'm always double-edged about the harmonium. Yes, you can't perform what we're about to hear on the harmonium, but not many people are like Amrit, who is that committed to learning this very difficult instrument that she's about to play, which is the sarangi. And I think you're going to sing, what are you going to sing? Are you going to sing as well? Yeah. What is it? What are you going to sing? Shabad. What's Shabad? So, who's it? Yeah, who's the Shabad? So we're going to have a Shabad again, sung by, not sung by. Are you going to sing as well? Yeah, of course you are. I was thinking, well, you've got to sing, you've got to say, is that a mic? That's a microphone holder for you, your sister. So Amrit is going to sing a Shabad for us. Yeah, you're both going to sing. What's your sister say? Hiran. Amrit and Hiran are going to sing a Shabad for us in Rag Bahar. So I'm going to leave it to her. So this would be the instrumentation, in fact, or something, stringed instrumentation, before the tyranny of the harmonium arrived. And again, this does link through to